All right, well, thank you for being here. My name is Scott. I live in the United States in Denver, and jet lag is a hell of a drug. So I'm going to try to fumble through this the best I can, I guess. Actually, hang on one second. I need to, how do I get the meeting presenter notes? Oh, there it is. OK, sorry. OK, so co-founder of a company called Status Page. We've been living and breathing status pages for the last 2+ years. And we picked up some good tidbits of information along the way, things to do and things definitely not to do. And so we're going to look at some of our customers, some people that aren't our customers, things that they're doing well, things that they're not doing well. We run our own status page as well, so things that we're doing good and things that we're not. Show of hands, who's a customer of ours in this room? Anybody? Couple? That's cool. We run status pages for all these people, so a lot of them sponsors, a lot of them major name brands that you've probably heard of. And this has let us sort of pick up a good amount of information along the way that I hope to disseminate. The goal for today is for me to make an impassioned case for you to be using a status page. If you decide to do something like build your own, you'll have made a poor choice, but that's fine. At least the internet will be in a better spot. So. But I want to start out with a bit of an exercise, and it was good that the talk before me was leading up into empathy. So I want you to just look at this picture of this person, and everybody just close your eyes for a minute. We're going to do a bit of an empathy exercise, and it's really tough to do this. But I think the first part of getting into empathy is getting into your own emotional space. So just close your eyes, and I want you to just notice, no judgment, but just notice your breathing patterns. Is it light or is it deep? Notice that you have a chair under you, pushing up on the bottom side of your legs, that you have a back to the chair. And with your breathing now, start to take in slower breaths, in for a count of 3 and out for a count of 6. I've been working on a lot of mindfulness lately, and this is a good morning exercise. This 1-2 pattern does a good job of getting into our parasympathetic nervous system. It slows down our digestion. It slows down our breathing and our heart rate. If you've done yoga, slight constriction in the back of your throat, this is what we call the ujjayi breath. And picture yourself, you're sitting on this rock. It's a nice, beautiful day. The water glancing off the rocks below you. Birds chirp, there's a slight breeze, but you're mostly content. Now, we spend so much time on call. We spend so much time dealing with production systems. We forget a lot about the human impact of what we do. A lot of us are vendors. The stuff that we do impacts other people. I just want to imagine you sitting on this rock on vacation, but still knowing that your cell phone is within reach. So keep your eyes closed, in for 3, out for 6, and just notice what little bit of tension may have crept in that moment where you realize how maybe familiar this scenario is. Like your shoulders start to tighten, your hands maybe clench a little bit. This mindfulness is just an exercise to get us into a better spot to understand the impact of what we do on a daily basis and the effect that the actions that we take can have on the people that are customers of ours. Now, if you're like me, you have a very special ringtone for that favorite contact called PagerDuty. We have audio.
PagerDuty alert. You have one triggered incident on service. Oh shit, the whole site is burning down.
So just observe, like, oh, man, this sucks. And this is never what PagerDuty tells me, but this is always what I'm thinking, right? Like every time that ringtone goes off, like, ugh.
Failure is nobody else is around to help you, and all your customers just cancel.
Yeah, okay. Also never what PagerDuty tells me, but this is what I think. Okay, so I wanted to start off with that exercise because I wanted us to get into a spot where we just understand, as engineers, developers, operations people, we live in such a action-focused doing mindset that we get out of our emotional space. And we're going to run through a lot of stuff today, a lot of checklist, manifesto stuff. But we needed to start out with this because the empathy and the emotional space is really what drives that checklist. It's not a thinking space. It's more of an emotional space. Why do we do the things that we do in terms of incident communication? And it's because there's somebody on the other end that's affected. If it was just us, we wouldn't care. We wouldn't need to deal with this. But we do need to deal with it because there's always somebody on the other end that's affected. A lot of times when that phone rings and it's PagerDuty calling, it's a vendor of ours. It's not even our fault, and there's not even necessarily anything I can do about it. But that emotional space still comes. And the vendor has a solid chance of screwing it up. But if they handle it correctly, they're actually going to come out on the better end, and we'll see that later in the presentation. So there's actually a term for this. It's called amygdala hijack. Terrorist negotiators know how to deal with it. And it's when your brain shuts down to the point that you're in a fight or fear or response mode. And your capacity for empathy goes to zero because you think you're about to die, like some animal. PagerDuty calls, and then a lion's going to come kill you, right? That's generally where your headspace is at. And so, okay, so today what we're going to do is talk about three things. Number one, what to do before you have incidents. There's a lot of tactics and tools that we can use. Obviously, we have a whole company built out around part of this. How to handle communication during the incident. It's really easy to get this wrong, but just with a little bit of training and with a little bit of conscientiousness in a better spot when we're not in the middle of the incident, we can train ourselves and get the tooling set up to do this to do it well. And then finally, after the incident, possibly just as important as how you communicate during the incident is what you do afterward. These are long-lived relationships that you have with the people that depend on your systems, and so we need to make sure that we take care of it after the incident as well. All right, so a little bit of definition. It's tough to read. What this basically says, this is just a Mac dictionary. What does status mean? The position of affairs at a particular time, especially in political or commercial context, like the status of a bill. But if you notice under that, it talks about social network updates, which is actually maybe more akin to what we're doing. Like there were some interesting status updates with some of my local friends. And how I would define status page, for you Brits, you may say status page. We're a little bit more redneck in the States. How I would define it is maybe like that thing the intern built last summer, and doesn't Jim still have the login? Fired. How we define status pages is a dedicated place to communicate system information to your users. And notice I didn't customers, because a lot of the growth that we're seeing with our own is status pages deployed within companies, not even necessarily out to their customers. It's ops people wanting to talk to C-level people and customer support. So it's a dedicated place to communicate system status information to your users. And they come in a lot of forms. You can build your own. This is what Stripe did for a custom-built status page. You can have a Tumblr status page. This is what Twitter did. You can have a fake status page. We were all up on Sunday. This is very timely. Here's a couple that we do. So this is Vimeo's with us. Put a good bit of work into it. Here's Twilio's. We just launched about a week ago with us. So bottom line, really, just get a status page. Like just anything that works. Please just do this. You don't even have to be a customer of ours. Just please do this. The internet's going to be a much better spot if you do this. So, all right. What makes a good status page? So this is tactically what you need to do in terms of if you want to buy something or if you want to build your own, what to do and what to know about before you have an incident. So this is the pre-work phase of what you're going to be doing. Number one, timestamps. So here's an incident report, Bitbucket. This is one of our customers. Each thing has a timestamp set up with it. Ideally, something like this was ago.
I know you data center people love UTC. If it's in a, please translate it to the local time. We don't even do this with our own products, so we need to sort of eat our own dog food here. But God, I hate UTC because I have to do a lot of calculations around it. But make sure there's timestamps. Number 2, mobile. Right? People are on the go. If your site goes down or your service goes down and somebody has to deal with it and they're walking to the tube and they pull up their phone and then they got to pull the screen forward and they trip on a crack and their phone breaks, you're going to lose your customers. So just make it look good on mobile. Functionality like subscribing to updates should also work on mobile just as well. Here's Cloudflare. These are our customers. Server density. And number 3, hosting. So this is sort of kind of goes without saying, you should be able to Apache bench the hell out of this thing and it not go down, right? Maybe even more frustrating, when you fly and the Wi-Fi is just barely working. That's probably a worse situation than if it just wasn't there at all. Because then you're I'll just read a book, right? That'll just be a little bit more practical. So this needs to run incredibly fast, static hosting, something like that. Just make sure your status page doesn't go down. And I think it goes without saying, but we have this conversation way more than I would like to have. If this is your data center, that's not where your status page should live either. So for obvious reasons, it needs to be isolated on separate infrastructure. If you're in US East, don't run it on Heroku, etc. Also, get a different DNS provider for your status page. If you're doing something like status.domain.com and you have a DNS outage, your status page is going to go with it. So it's $9 a year, get a new domain. And then finally, how to contact, right? So people are having an issue. If they're trained up well, first thing they might hit is the status page. Are there any delivery delays? What's the issue? Put a way for them to get in touch. Because if they're having an issue and they see everything's green, they're going to want to reach out. That's the next logical conclusion to what they're doing. All right, so that's sort of before. So that was the tool set. Moving on to something more of how to talk about status when you actually have the status page up. So this is the during the incident portion. Number 1, communicate early. So here's an incident that we just had some database issues. And the first message that went out, the site is currently experiencing a higher than normal amount of load and may be causing pages to be slow or unresponsive, blah, 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 blah. Now, if we translate that, what this really means is we have no fucking clue what's going on right now. But we're not asleep. There's something up there. At least when you come, you see services down, hit the status page. Somebody had to have posted that, so at least they're working on the issue, even if they don't know exactly what it is. Notice we went back and updated the title to say I/O contention on the leader database. That's when we found out what the problem was. But initially it was Pingdom just yelling at us saying your stuff's not available. Communicate often. So a couple people have hit on this. I think Anthony from DN Simple and just this morning with David and server density. But this is Heroku's response to Amazon's issue in US East this weekend. And you'll notice that they are always talking about when the next time it was they're going to update. So it started out at we're going to update every 30 minutes just to set expectations. And then as the incident went on, it was, hey, we're going to update when we have new news or at an hour at the latest. And then make sure you do it, right? So if you look at the timestamps and match them up, you'll see they were right on time every single time. And that's good. It's very predictable. This is mostly important too when an upstream provider is having issues, right? Because it's our hands are still tied. There's literally nothing we can be doing, but at least we're actively monitoring it and we're in communication with them. So number 3, communicate precisely. Let's go over a couple things of what not to say and maybe what will be better to say. We hope the problem will be fixed within 15 minutes. This is not a good one. Just don't do ETAs, all right? At best, they're going to be neutral, and at worst, you're just going to disappoint people. So just don't do ETAs. The problem seems to be database related. Doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence. Something a little more generic. We're still tracking down the root cause of the issue, right? We want to be able to communicate precisely about what we know the issues to be. All right, next up, we think we fixed it, but we need more time. Not great. Verification of the fix is still underway. It's very declarative what you are doing. You're sort of stating the action that's going on at the time.
The fix has been working for a few hours now. Okay, just don't submit this update. Just kind of revel in the quiet. All right, just enjoy that you've sort of fixed the update and that there's been no activity on the status page since then. Amazon is still having trouble with things. I know this is maybe more frequently for people, but please don't throw your providers under the bus. It's really tacky. It looks really childish. I'll talk about it again in a couple of slides. We continue to work with our hosting provider. All right, you picked Amazon. You could have racked your own hardware. You chose not to. This is on you, so don't try to deflect the blame for what's going on. If you go back to the Heroku slides, you'll see they don't mention Amazon once. Everybody knows they're on Amazon. They never mention it. We're still trying to find Bob, who got us into this mess anyway. You can save the interpersonal team issues for later. We continue to investigate the problem, right? So just to summarize, very declarative status updates. What's going on? What is the current state of the system? And what actions are you taking to move forward? Communicate together. As your company grows, there's going to be concerns around like, what is our brand messaging, right? All the people that aren't writing code now all of a sudden care about the status page. And so one good way to handle that is just to have templates set up so that you don't have to think about the language that you're going to use, and the Dilbert folk in your company can approve the messaging beforehand just so that they know what's about to go out, how you're about to talk to people. Does anyone know who this guy is? This is like my favorite dude. He's a lot of fun. This guy's a boss. He's the guy that landed a plane on a fucking river with like 100 people in it. So for those of you that don't know the story, he, like 30 seconds after takeoff or something, a flock of birds like flew into the plane, both engines gone. They're like hovering above, New York City. Does anyone know who this guy is? All right, more on him in a minute. So this is Captain Sullenberger, and just imagine you're piloting a jet with 100 people in it. You lose both engines. And amidst all that chaos of figuring out, like, I'm not going to be able to get back to the runway, like, what am I going to do about this? If you read the transcript of him talking to the tower, pilots are very, very well trained in this. Communication is very terse, it's very dense, very accurate. And so among all this, he comes on, and instead of saying, oh shit, we're about to die, he communicates what happened, what the impact was, and what they're going to do about it. Like, just first try. Ready? Hit birds. We lost thrust in both engines. We're turning back to LaGuardia. That's all he said. And when you're in the middle of an incident, something has fallen over, your phone's ringing, people are wondering what's wrong, and you're getting around to fixing it, you're going to want to communicate like this. But for some reason, you won't, and you'll be more like Charles Dickens. And as you talk about your database failure, it will come out something like this. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. You may never use punctuation, and in your head you will be debating the use of dashes and semicolons, and the capitalization of the word light as a proper noun. And for some reason, I don't know why, I still don't know why, we've just sort of built features to handle this. It's a lot harder than you think. So just take my word for it. This will be you if you don't have a decent amount of templating set up to just help you get something up to start out with. And then, again, on togetherness, just delegate if you have a big enough team. Pick somebody who's not fixing the problem. That's sole job is to deflect all the crap from the people fixing the problem, right? You don't want to be bugged by the C-level people like, hey, the site's down? Like, of course we do. Like, go away, right? But you don't want to respond when you're in that state of emotion. So get somebody else to help you out. And they're going to be the one, ideally a little bit technical too, that can keep a watch and a clock and say, hey, we're coming up on our 30-minute timer. What should we be saying? Maybe they take a minute or so to formulate it, right? If they need to gather some more information of what's happened in the last service. At least you have somebody else, because if that timer goes off and you're in the middle of a shell command, it's going to be a little bit angry for you. So that's during the incident. And so we'll talk about after the incident. Trolls and tickets. So this is going to be inevitable, right? You're going to have people that think that haranguing you on Twitter is going to fix the problem a little bit quicker. And you'll get support tickets. We actually end up with our customers coming into Olark and asking us, like, why the hell the site's down? And we get stuff like this that's like, I've been trying to do my homework, please, like, what are you guys doing over there, right? So you gotta respond to all those. When we have outages, we see stuff like this too. Yeah, come on, right? All right, thanks, dude. You're helping us out here. All right, so first thing after the incident is apologize. This is an outage from Twilio. This is back in 2013 to give them some credit. And you'll notice this whole lead-in paragraph, the words sorry, apologize, regret, none of that is anywhere in the opening paragraph. It was very robotic. Twilio experienced an outage, although we've stated how the incident unfolded, blah, blah, here's the full report. Nothing about us being humans, us paying for their service, et cetera. Like, people were down when this happened. This sucked. We did find it at the bottom. All of us here at Twilio apologize. Like, okay, thanks. You literally have like 28 paragraphs, and in the very last one, you decide to say sorry. So don't do that. Number 2, don't name names. Here's an email I got from our knowledge base provider. Today's outage caused by Amazon and EngineYard. If you want a good way to get me to not pay for your service anymore, this is a good way to do it. Again, you chose the providers that you did. Just take responsibility for it and move on with life. Number 2, be personal. So, the best time to sort of recoup some of the damage that you maybe have done and turned it into even a better relationship than you started with is during the postmortem. Like, it's very clear that you have a lot of opportunity here that can be squandered, but if you do it right, you can actually end up on the better side of people's opinion. So here's the same Twilio blog post that we just looked at, and I modified it slightly. And you'll notice that, like, just on the outside of the text, it doesn't look a lot different. Like, there's no big bold caps like, oh, I'm so sorry, terrible things happened, blah, blah, blah. It's still text, but it's sort of subtle, right? So here's what changed. Number 1, don't post it as like the company name, all right? Just put your damn name on the top of the blog post. You're a person, just do it. So this is their VP of engineering, right? Posted by this guy. Twilio experienced an outage. Very first, right off the bat, I'm very sorry if you were affected by this outage. Not we're very sorry. Not the Twilio Incorporated company is very sorry. Not our whole team is very sorry. Just I'm very sorry. Just own it. About this outage that many of you likely were affected by. Now, if you'll notice at the bottom, there's a stat here that said only 1.4% of their customers were affected. But don't try to deflect things, right? Don't say, I'm very sorry for the slim percentage of our customers that were affected by this, right? That's not, just own up to it. Many is still an accurate term. You're not saying most, that would be inaccurate. Many is still an accurate term. Many people were still affected by this. And it's very inclusive. And I'm personally going to see to it that we do all that we can to make sure it never happens again. Not, we're going to try very hard, but I'm taking responsibility. Somebody is taking responsibility. I'm saying sorry, even if you weren't the one that did the thing in the first place. So be personal about it. And then details inspire confidence. Like, we all go to meetups to talk about which version of Ubuntu we're running and how do we patch for Heartbleed. Like, we all do these things because we love the details. We love the guts and sort of the glory of having erected this big system that's running our web infrastructure. And that's great. And a postmortem is a good time for you to shine and talk about the cool things that you're doing. It's a good recruiting tool. But it's also a good time to inspire confidence that you know what the hell is going on in the systems that you built and why it failed the way that it did. So this is the same Twilio post, right? Incident summary and impact, great readable bullet format, right? This is the TLDR. Very dense timeline, right? Notice they translated into Pacific Daylight Time. Awesome for that, as well as UTC. This went down for another 2 or 3 pages. This is a screen cap of just the first page. Root cause analysis, like this to me said, these guys really have it under control. This may happen again, but like, man, they really did a good investigation to figure out what the problem was. And number 5, close the loop. So there's always going to be a list of action items for a postmortem, at least for a big outage like this was. And that needs to get as much attention as the I'm sorry and the root cause, et cetera. And so this is where they didn't do really well, right? There's just a big block of text. It's not very easy to pick out what went wrong that you've already fixed and what is outstanding and when is that going to get delivered, right? So the red things are the things that they already fixed, but it wasn't very easy to say that. I probably would have pulled these 4 things out into like a bulleted format and put the dates by which they were delivered. And then on the green things, some sort of date or just follow up and edit the blog post when you actually do deliver them so that if people run into this later in the future, they're evaluating your service, they're going to go back and figure out how do they respond to big outages. They can see, oh, major incident happened, they came up with 4 things. 2 were fixed on day 1. The last one was fixed a week after the major incident. You're closing the loop. You're following up. You're delivering on what you said you were going to do. How are we doing on time? A couple minutes? OK. All right, so this is all very, very tactical about how we're going to do this. But let's talk a little bit about why we do this. So we wrote a blog post that kind of gathered a lot of the information that we've collected over the years about why to do this. We started the company on the premise of this just makes sense and we want to do it, so let's just do it. But it turns out the research actually does back us up. So gaining trust. For continuing to keep the trust of existing customers that you have, gaining trust for a new customer is actually going to cost 7 times as much. And so doing this helps you keep the customers that you have and not have a high churn rate and to be continuing to have to gain new customers as you're like bleeding them out the back, right? So doing this, being transparent, means that you can engender the trust of the customers that you do have. And then also the way that humans share experiences. So here's a graph, and what you need to know is that the blue line is the percentage of people that share a bad experience, and the green line is the percentage of people that share a good experience. And you'll notice that people will share with no one when they have a good experience, roughly. And then in every other category, people share bad experiences way more than they share good experiences. And particularly damning is with coworkers and online friends, right? So if you have a bad experience with a vendor, you're likely going to talk about it on Twitter, which means all of your DevOps buddies are going to hear about it on Twitter. And so making sure that you can take something like an outage and turn it into the best possible experience is going to help damage control a little bit. But also, if people like that you had a good response to it and they feel like you're a good vendor, they want to root for you, they're going to continue paying for your service. They're going to share that out as a good experience, and it's a good thing for you. And last but not least, the service recovery paradox. This has its own Wikipedia page. I will just sort of summarize by saying a lot of research was done, and they actually found out that people can come out of an incident with a better view of a company if, and only if they respond to it properly, they'll come out with a better view than if the incident had never happened at all. Which is kind of weird to think about, right? But I'm not going to sort of fight the research. I did see a video of Gary Vaynerchuk, who can be a little obnoxious, but he was talking about doing some consulting work for a big name brand company like Coca-Cola, and sort of asked the question like, can we screw up so that we can fix it? Because he knew this to be true. And so for a company that generally is by the book, very good, never gets anything wrong, he was actually starting to ask himself the question, like, can we screw something up, not in a horrible way, but in just slightly bad enough way that if we fix it, people will think better of us. So I think this is very real. The fact that we've been living this for 2 years, I can tell you that a lot of our customers oftentimes respond to us. We follow up many months after they became a customer. How's your experience going? How are your customers feeling about it? David had a tweet up a couple presentations ago. And this is generally the sentiment. Thank you for having this. We appreciate the transparency. Thank you for giving us a window into you wanting to do your job well and actually following up and doing your job well. So that's all I have. Happy to take questions. Yeah. So the question is like, is there ever a case where ETAs or time frames make sense? I think in very, very limited cases where you have, if you're doing a database restore that's just chugging along and you got to wait for it, scoping the ETA to a particular thing makes sense. Like we're restoring the database and it's set to take 12 more minutes. We'll update more information once the database is restored, right? But not giving a final ETA on when this is going to be resolved and everything's going to be fixed and back up and running. So yeah, if you have a very particularly performing, well-bounded problem, sure, that would make sense. Yep.
I have very good advice about transparency and everything, but I've certainly seen some status updates where you just read it and you think, oh my goodness, they didn't understand that about their own system.
Yep.
And it's actually negative. So any advice apart from avoid those kind of things?
Yeah, I think that there were a couple that we went through with the red X and the green check mark, right? Just be very careful in the way that you word it, right? You're going to have those times. And you can talk about them in the postmortem where you can provide some more context, right? So the time to talk about your ineptitude is not necessarily during the incident, right? So it's not like, oh, we only gave the database 512 megs of RAM and it just blew the RAM thing and got kill 9, right? So that's not the time to talk about it. The time to talk about it is later on in the postmortem when you've addressed the problem, right? So because in the postmortem you have the chance to talk about what you've already done to fix it and why it's not going to happen again. And so people are going to read that and go, why, it's just like noobs, like why did they do that? Okay, but at least they learned from it and it's already in a better spot, right? So they won't leave with a negative association there, right? Because these neural pathways start to form. They're going to see what you did and go, oh, they were noobs. But then they're going to say, oh, they fixed it, at least they're learning. Okay, good association.
So,
Cool.
Thank you again.